Today, we're going over why Hitler lost World War II. Because in 1940, on a map, Europe looked like this. Germany had already conquered Austria, Poland, Norway, Belgium, Denmark, and France. In the south, Italian dictator Mussolini had formed an alliance with Hitler, and there was even a peace agreement between Germany and the Soviet Union, which meant Hitler didn't have to worry about them either. Basically, only one major country in Europe was still standing against Hitler, Britain. And Hitler believed that Britain's Prime Minister Winston Churchill would do the smart thing. Sign a peace treaty, bow down, save his people from the unstoppable German war machine. But Churchill did the exact opposite. He gave one of the most iconic speeches in human history, making it absolutely clear that Britain would never stop fighting, that there would be no peace treaty, and that the war against Germany would continue no matter what. That one speech changed everything. Hitler now had no choice. He had to invade Britain. He called it Operation Sea Lion. But here was the problem. There was no land connection between Britain and mainland Europe. And if Hitler tried sending ships, the British Royal Navy had more ships than Germany. So Hitler decided to take control of the sky first. The German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, had 2,600 aircraft. Britain had only 700. On 10th July 1940, Hitler attacked Britain from the sky. The goal was simple: destroy British aircraft, destroy airfields, destroy manufacturing factories, and then invade on the ground. The smaller British Royal Air Force fought back with everything they had, and they took heavy losses. Things were looking very bad for Britain. But then something unexpected happened. On the night of 24th August 1940, some German pilots made a mistake. They accidentally bombed London, killing civilians. Churchill was furious. He immediately ordered the Royal Air Force to bomb Berlin in retaliation. And when Hitler saw his own capital being bombed, he completely lost his temper. He ordered the German Air Force to forget the airfields and the factories. He wanted London destroyed instead. This was Hitler's first major mistake of the war. Because by shifting the target from British airfields to London, Hitler gave the Royal Air Force exactly the time they needed to recover, to repair, to rebuild. 15th September 1940, Hitler ordered a massive all-out attack. More than 1,120 aircraft launched towards Britain at once. 620 fighters and 500 bombers. Britain could only put up 630 aircraft to defend. What happened next? Nobody expected. The British Royal Air Force shot down more than 60 German aircraft and lost only 29 of their own. For the first time in World War II, Hitler had lost a major battle. This day is now known as the Battle of Britain Day. And the reason Britain won comes down to one simple thing: motivation. When Germany was attacking, it was just another conquest for them. But for Britain, it was survival. It was existence. There was nowhere left to run. And soldiers who are fighting for their homeland fight completely differently from soldiers who are just following orders. A recent example of this is the Russia-Ukraine war. When Russia invaded Ukraine, everyone thought Russia would win within a week, because the Russian army was much larger and more advanced. But the motivation levels among Ukrainian soldiers were much higher. And that changed everything. Hitler realized Operation Sea Lion wasn't going to work. So he postponed it, and made his second catastrophic mistake. He decided to invade the Soviet Union. Now remember, Hitler and the Soviet Union had a peace agreement, but Hitler had always hated communists. And more than that, he believed that only by controlling a country as large as the Soviet Union could Germany become the #1 superpower in the world. He was suffering from pure megalomania. He genuinely believed he could rule the entire world. On the 22nd of June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa. He divided his army into 3 groups. The first would attack Leningrad in the north. The second would march directly towards Moscow. And the third would sweep through Ukraine in the south. The Soviet army had 20,000 tanks. Germany had only 6,000. But German technology was far superior. And Hitler's blitzkrieg strategy, the lightning-fast coordinated attacks that had destroyed France in weeks, worked brilliantly at first. Within days, the Germans had pushed 100 kilometers into Soviet territory. Within weeks, they were only 300 kilometers from Moscow. It looked like Hitler was going to win again. But then two things happened that Hitler never planned for. The first was winter. Hitler had disagreements with his own military commanders that delayed the final push towards Moscow until October 1941. By then, the brutal Russian winter had arrived. Soviet soldiers were completely used to fighting in freezing temperatures. German soldiers were not. Their weapons froze, their vehicles stopped working, their soldiers were dying from the cold as much as from enemy bullets. The Soviet Union immediately joined hands with Britain and became part of the Allied powers. They planned a supply route through Iran, but the Iranian government was sympathetic to Hitler. So Britain and the Soviet Union invaded Iran together just to secure that supply line. The second thing that changed everything was Japan. On 7th December 1941, Japan attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. More than 2,300 American soldiers were killed in a single morning. America, which had been watching World War II from a safe distance and refusing to get involved, had finally had enough. America declared war and officially joined the Allied forces alongside Britain and the Soviet Union. Now, Hitler wasn't just fighting Britain and the Soviets, he was fighting America too. Meanwhile, one of the bloodiest battles in human history had begun, the Battle of Stalingrad. Hitler wanted to take Stalingrad in southern Russia to cut off Soviet supply lines. The battle began in the summer of 1942 and continued for months. At one point, the German army had almost completely taken the city. Building by building, street by street, the Soviets kept fighting. And then winter came again. By November 1942, around 300,000 German troops in Stalingrad were completely surrounded by Soviet soldiers, with no food, no supplies, and absolutely no way out. In February 1943, those 300,000 German soldiers surrendered. This was the single biggest turning point of World War II. From this moment on, Hitler was never winning another major battle on the Eastern Front. Around the same time, something remarkable happened in Italy. The Italian people had completely turned against their own dictator Mussolini. An anti-fascist movement exploded across the country. Civilians took up arms and revolted. Mussolini was eventually captured and executed by Italian partisans, ordinary citizens who had picked up weapons to fight for their own freedom. You might have heard the famous song Bella Ciao from the Money Heist series. That song actually comes from this exact period in Italian history. The word partigiano in the opening of the song means partisan, referring to these Italian civilian fighters who rose up against Mussolini. Italy switched sides and stopped fighting the Allied forces entirely. By 1944, the Allied forces were ready to make their most daring move yet. June 6, 1944, D-Day. More than 150,000 British, American, and Canadian soldiers landed on the beaches of Normandy and France in a single day. It was the largest seaborne invasion in human history, and it opened up a brand new front against Germany from the west. Hitler was now in an impossible situation. His army was being destroyed by the Soviets in the east. He was being bombed from the air constantly. And now 150,000 Allied soldiers had landed in France and were marching towards Germany from the west. He tried to pull his army back from the Eastern Front to fight the Allied forces coming from the west. The moment he did that, the Soviets launched a massive counterattack. Within 2 months, the Soviets had retaken 600 kilometers of territory. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Romania all fell back to the Allied side. Germany was now being attacked from 3 sides simultaneously. Hitler launched one final desperate offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. In the forests of Ardennes, the German army tried one last push to break through Allied lines. It failed. In February 1945, at the Yalta Conference in Crimea, it was announced that any country that declared war on Germany could join the Allied forces in the final invasion. Venezuela, Uruguay, Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, all of them declared war on Germany. The last 4 months of World War II were the most brutal of the entire conflict. Approximately 30,000 people were dying every single day. As the Allied forces pushed deeper into Germany, they discovered something that shocked the entire world: Hitler's concentration camps, where hundreds of thousands of innocent Jewish people had been systematically and brutally murdered. City after city across Germany was being bombed into rubble. The Allied forces were closing in from the west, the Soviet army was closing in from the east, and Hitler was hiding underground in a bunker beneath Berlin. By April 1945, Soviet soldiers were fighting their way through the streets of Berlin itself. The city was completely surrounded. There was no escape. On the 30th of April 1945, with Soviet soldiers just blocks away from his bunker, Adolf Hitler shot himself. On the 8th of May 1945, Germany formally surrendered. World War II in Europe was over. After Germany's defeat, the world was completely reshaped. East Germany and West Germany were created. The borders of dozens of countries were redrawn. The United Nations was established in October 1945. The World Bank, the IMF, and NATO were all formed in the years that followed. And the European coal and steel community, formed to bring France and Germany together through trade, eventually became the European Union, an organization that erased borders between European countries and helped ensure that for the past 80 years, there has been no war on European soil anywhere close to the scale of World War II. So why exactly did Hitler lose? It came down to 4 massive mistakes. First, he shifted the bombing target from British airfields to London, which gave Britain exactly enough time to survive. Second, he invaded the Soviet Union while Britain was still undefeated, opening a second massive front before finishing the first. Third, he underestimated the Russian winter, the same fatal mistake Napoleon had made more than 100 years earlier. And fourth, he let his ego override his generals. The man who believed he could rule the entire world couldn't listen to the people who actually knew how to fight wars. But World War II wasn't actually over when Germany surrendered. Japan refused to surrender for another 2 months, until America dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But that is a story for another video. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.